Hi, YouTubers. I want to bring to you co-founder and co-author MK of Finding Erotica to discuss a topic that's of great concern to many mature adults. How do we face the challenges of post-injury and post-illness intimacy? MK is going to discuss his story about cancer. Let's get into it. Hi, MK. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great. Please share with our audience what kind of cancer you had.
I was diagnosed with prostate cancer.
Okay. And what was the most difficult thing about having prostate cancer?
Well, it began with the diagnosis that I had cancer. And I'll never forget that moment. You know, it was like a horror movie. Initially, my first reaction is I heard the soundtrack. Thump, 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 thump. And it was my heart beating. My mouth grew dry, my palms grew moist, and the worst case scenarios ran through my mind of, radiation, chemotherapy, loss of sexual function, none of it good. And it was as if all the power was sucked out of me. I was in the movie Aliens. I'd been inhabited by some kind of alien being, capital C, cancer. And I felt completely at the mercy of this disease and of the professionals, medical professionals that I was handing myself over to. I was really scared to death.
What were the treatment options given to you, and what treatment did you choose and why?
Well, the first one was, we got to take that prostate out. That didn't sit too well with me. What we're going to do is we're going to go through a round of radiation and then a round of chemotherapy. We're going to take a lot of drugs, and we'll see how we do with that. And if that doesn't work, then we'll take your prostate out. Or we can try gene therapy, hormonal therapy, excuse me. And given the fact that testosterone leads to the growth of cancers in the prostate, basically we're going to be a 9-month course of testosterone blocking and feeding you estrogen. And then the last one, door number 5, which I chose, was what's called active surveillance. We're going to watch what happens. Fortunately, the kind of cancer I had wasn't aggressive. And so I had an option of, and with that came some restoration of power. That I still was going to take some medication because my prostate was enlarged, and problems urinating, had to pee all the time, couldn't empty my bladder all the time, and also too, to fight the cancer that was there. So I chose the active surveillance. And with that came some life choices of I had to change how I lived. So I lost 50 pounds. I stopped drinking alcohol. I stopped smoking cigars. I changed my diet. I educated myself about prostate issues and prostate cancer. I read 2 books that were really helpful. One by a guy named Dr. Snuffy Myers. I spoke to someone from his clinic about alternative approaches. I got a book by Dr. Mark Schultz called Invasion of the Prostate Snatchers, which confirmed my gut feeling that I did not want to take an invasive approach to this, because there were more problems that would come with an invasive approach, like removing the prostate, than could come from trying to do self-care. So I felt emboldened to say, I can heal myself. Now, I wasn't going to turn my back on medical professionals because, fortunately I had a great urologist with whom I was working, but I wanted to see what I could do myself. He supported me in that choice.
What was the medication that you were prescribed?
I had 2 drugs, Flomax to help with the enlarged prostate, to help me, with the urination problems, and what's called finasteride to fight the cancer. both of which have significant side effects. And they cut libido. They impair sexual function. They, where they lead towards healing, they also too bring their own personal crisis with it, because it's an enforced change. It was an enforced change in my body. And so my goal then, as I set goals for myself, the long range goal was to be free of cancer. Short range goal was to get off the medications as quickly as I could. And again, and what became the longer range goal too was to be as healthy as I could, to do whatever I could within my power to live, and to live as fully as I wanted to.
Wow. Now, you mentioned earlier the changes that you made, losing the weight, stopping the smoking, drinking. Were there any other changes that you made before and or after treatment?
Yeah, I had to really deal with the emotional side of it. And I think this is where a lot of mature adults suffer. Because, to some people, it feels like a death sentence. The fears that accompany it are, from I'm never going to be able to be sexual in a way that's familiar to me again. Before I enter into a relationship with someone, I'm going to have the conversation about, about my body and the way it functions. Deeper fears about I've loved for the last time, and I'm not going to be loved again in a intimate, physical way with with a loving partner. Uh, and so the other changes I had to do was to confront those fears, to find ways in which I could still love and be loved, to find ways in which I could still be sexual, where I could still be intimate, where I could feel some sense of control in this situation where I felt complete lack of control. And because I still had feelings, I still, had, I didn't want to just suddenly stop living a very important part of my life, a relational, intimate part of my life, but it meant bringing about some changes.
Okay. How has the cancer impacted your personal and life of intimacy?
It, with it comes a lot of strong feelings that are difficult to deal with. Shame, for one. Uh, it becomes a very private thing, uh, because I felt impotent. And that's hard to acknowledge as a man. And it's not just me, because one of the things I started to do was that, I started to write about it. It's where the Finding Erotica was given initial birth, of that, where I couldn't speak about it necessarily with great ease because of the shame I felt, because of the fear I felt. I could write about it. I still wanted to be a sexual being. I could write scenarios that expressed the feelings that I still had. And here's what was interesting, is that the more research I did, the more I talked with other people, the more I sought to control it myself, and to find other alternative ways of not just healing physically but emotionally. I uh, I was connected with other mature adults, other men in particular, who were going through the same thing. I mean, most men will. And let me share a story with you. I was, by chance, sitting at a table with some friends, and sitting next to a guy who was a former professional football player, an alpha male, right? Played for the Chicago Bears for a long time, was a good player. And he asked me what I do, and I started to tell him about what was happening. And it was a pause in the conversation. That was the first time I met him. He looks at me, he says, "Man, I'm going through the same thing." He said, "For years, I get hard like that, you know, satisfy my wife, feel good about myself, and it doesn't happen anymore." And it's had a big impact upon me and upon our relationship. My wife feels bad, as if it's something she's doing wrong. I feel bad because I can't satisfy my wife anymore. And what's happened is that for him and so many other people, they stopped being sexual. You know, because they both felt so bad, right? And they it was, and let's face it, it's hard enough to talk about intimacy for most couples anyway. But then when a big problem like this comes up, where we have to say, you know, where that's going to change our lives in a significant way, how do you talk about that, right? How do you feel comfortable by saying, you know, I'm afraid I will never be able to fuck you again. I'm afraid that that'll drive you away. And, you know, for the partner to say, you know, I'm afraid that I'm the reason why you can't. And that, and, you know, and women have gone through similar things too, of, you know, women who have had breast cancer and double mastectomy. How will I ever be loved again? So, you know, I talked to a friend of mine who was going through similar things, and he tried all the different remedies. None of it's worked. He has a really loving partner who they were able to talk about it, seek alternatives. But they haven't been able to have intercourse for over 3 years now. And, you know, it has an impact because it means a redefinition of how you're sexual. And for so much of sex, it's focused on outcomes of orgasm. For a man, it's you know, the pressure to perform and to, you know, to be able to be you know, get hard and do his thing, you know, and to redefine that is it's a real struggle, especially if you feel like you're doing it in isolation.
What advice would you give to men who learn of this cancer? Are there any support groups available to men besides a doctor's discharge plan?
I'm sure there are support groups. I didn't find any. I found it with friends who I know had gone through the same thing as me. I sought them out and talked with them, and they sometimes connected me with other people. But it's one of the things that I found that has motivated our work in finding erotica. Given the absence of this platform, why not create a website that allows that conversation to happen? To write blogs that address it, that people can read, learn from, integrate ways to integrate new understandings into their relationship. Because the challenge of post-illness, post-injury intimacy is one that it's like the elephant in the room. It's so present, and yet there aren't those available resources. Now, what we're finding, and you know, and I think it's one of the things we found during COVID, is the rise of popularity of sex therapy. And something again that we write about on our website, that there are online resources available to people that they can discreetly engage in, and you're not confessing your sins, you're just sharing your reality, right? And it doesn't mean a loss of love. You know, it takes time to adjust, and maybe it will lead to you know, a breakup of your relationship, but it doesn't mean that love ends. It doesn't mean that sexuality ends. It means, though, that maybe something that's been long overdue needs to happen, of you and your partner say, how do we redefine our sex lives? How, you know, a friend of ours described it as, you know, couples learn how to do a certain kind of dance, and they don't know how to learn new steps. The old dance becomes boring, as does the old music. A rut occurs, and, you know, intimacy dies its own slow death anyway. Make changes. One of the people I spoke to, who, you know, was bemoaning the loss of sexuality in his relationship and both people feeling bad. His wife showed up one night with, she said, "I got a surprise for you." It was their first sex toy. And, you know, he was almost a little embarrassed to tell me, but he said, it helped. It turned things around. It helped. And so there's options. Don't cut yourself off from those options. And don't let the fear of loss take precedence. You know, deal with those fears. Look at them head on. Discuss them. They're real, but the reality oftentimes is not as great as the fear. And remember that cancer, yes, it takes power from you, has power over you, but there are still ways that you can regain and retain your own power. It isn't a death sentence necessarily, especially if it's prostate cancer. Because most mature men, if they die of a cancer, it's going to be something other than a prostate cancer. If aggressive action is necessary, make sure you are fully educated about what it's going to mean, right? Yes. But until that point comes, find a supportive, a source of support, and a medical professional you can trust, and do whatever you can within your power to heal yourself.
Thank you, MK, for joining us today and sharing about your personal life of intimacy and prostate cancer, and your sharing with us your testimony. I know you are certain to impact a lot of men who are going through this themselves, so we appreciate you again opening up and sharing your story. For those of you who want to reach out to MK, email him at info@findingerotica.com. If you like this video, smash the like button. And if you want to find out when we upload more content like this, please tickle that notification bell. And to follow Finding Erotica, go to findingerotica.com/blogs.